Okay. Hi, welcome. All right, everyone's getting settled in the room here. It's nice to see so many people joining in person today. Yes, we're going to try one more time. All right, we're going to try one more time. Are you hearing an echo, Nick? There's one more. Sorry for those online. We've got some echoes in the room. Thank you, Tracy. I think we might have gotten it. Okay. Okay, we are now going to get started. All right, welcome everyone to the 5th meeting of the Clark County Climate Change Planning Community Advisory Group meeting. Nice to see you all. I'm Sylvia Chibrowski, and I'll be helping to facilitate today's meeting. I'll just go through a little bit of our welcome agenda, et cetera, and then we'll dive in. So if you go to the next slide. This is just a reminder that this project is funded by Washington's Climate Commitment Act, so thank you. And next slide. So I just want to do a quick reminder of the project team here, which is on the slide, and I think you've all gotten to know us recently, but I also know that we have Jose here today, so I'm going to turn it over to Jenna to introduce Jose from the county.
Oh, okay, yes. So Jose Alvarez is the Community Planning Program Manager. So I report to Jose on the Community Planning team. So he is here today to help us field questions if needed. Jose's been at the county for a long time, so he knows a lot. So if things come up that I can't answer, he might be able to help the conversation move forward. So welcome, Jose.
Great. Okay, well, let's go to the next slide, and just a quick reminder of our meeting objective and purpose today. So today we're really wholly focused on the resilience goals and policies that we've been working on for the past few meetings. You all took an incredible amount of time and work to give us your thoughts on the goals and policies before this meeting through a survey, so we really appreciate that. And today we are going to use your survey results to kind of help organize our discussion. As you know, there are dozens of goals and policies, so it's hard to talk about everything in depth. So we're going to try to go through those as much as we can and seek to come to agreement on what to move forward with for further analysis. And I'm going to clarify this again later, but the goal here is not to decide, yes, no, I like this goal or policy, I think it's the best thing to do for climate resilience. It's really around, is this worthy of analysis to determine, is this a good goal and policy for climate resilience for Clark County? And Dana's going to describe a little bit more what that looks like later on when we get into that presentation. So that's really the goal for today. And if we go into the agenda on the next slide, We're going to have a little bit of time for project updates and just some kind of context and grounding to help you consider a few other bigger picture things as we get into the goals and policies list. And really, we have, 2 hours on the goals and policies list to have that discussion. And then we'll have 10 minutes for public comment and then wrap up and next steps. And I'll just ask for members of the public who would like to make comment to raise your hands when we get to that portion towards the end of the meeting. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so just some reminders. I think we have a lot of CAG members here in person today, which is great to see, and we have several online. So thanks everyone for joining. Just a reminder, if you're online, just stay on mute when not speaking and join on video if you're able to. And if you're online, raise your hand in the platform to get in the queue, or just speak up if we're not seeing you for some reason. And if you're in the room, we do a little this, so you don't have to hold your hand up. You can just raise your tent card to show that you want to speak. If you're in Zoom and you have any technical issues, you can email Ariella at adahlin@kernswest.com. And as we're in the room today, we appreciate you saying your name before you're speaking because people on Zoom can't always tell who's speaking here. And then we have a couple of breaks, but please move around, take care of yourself as needed. And this meeting is being recorded. If you're in the room, there's food back here. I think we have falafels and pita bread, lots of good stuff. So just feel free to stand up and get food whenever you want to. There's water in the back as well. And bathrooms are out this door, kind of to the left. There's a sign. All right, and next slide. Okay, so some discussion guidelines. These are the same as before. You all do a great job of staying respectful and engaging in the conversation. And today in particular, we really want to stay on topic and try to get to kind of that alignment on the final goals and policies list. So we're really going to try to have concise times for discussion and really appreciate it too if we're able to hear from a lot of people. If you're someone that tends to speak up a lot, maybe step down. And if you don't tend to speak up a lot, kind of step into the conversation and get brave. And also, if you're online, just a reminder that if you use the chat and you are a community advisory group member, you should be chatting to everyone so that everyone can see the chat. And next slide. Okay, so just a little bit of business before we dive in. We do have 2 past meeting summaries. We have the meeting number 3 summary and the meeting number 4 summary. And at our last meeting, I just want to call attention to a lot of you provided input on the meeting summary, and we realized that some of the input provided was really on that sort of high-level look at goals and policies rather than the meeting summary itself. So we apologize if we caused any confusion by kind of sending those both out at the same time and asking for your input. But we did send out the summary, so we just want to ask here if anyone has any comments or edits on the meeting number 3 or 4 summary, and if not, we'll kind of move those forward for posting. Yes, Dave.
Yeah, this is Dave Rowe. On G15, you talk about the county shall support new and improved passenger and commuter rail transportation. That commuter rail could be added, regional rail is different than commuter rail. And I think regional rail should be added to this statement too. Commuter rail is one direction in the morning and one direction at night. Regional rail is bi-directional all day long.
Add it to the meeting number 4 summary. It's the one 6/25/24. Oh, okay. So Dave, we're going to get to all of those later today. So perfect. No worries. We've got a lot of documents running around. So we're just talking about the meeting summary from last time, not the actual goals and policies list. Okay, great. Well, thank you, everyone. With that, I am going to hand it over to Jenna for some project updates.
Okay. So I just have a few quick items today. One is in your meeting materials, we did have a a handful of public comments that have come in since your last meeting. Also, especially because we were asking for feedback, there was quite a bit of comments from all of you in there too. So that was in your meeting materials and are available online if you want to look at them more. Let's see, there's some other meeting materials I'll mention later on, so I'm going to skip over those for now. But really want to thank you all for the multiple rounds of review on goals and policies since we last met. We know that was a significant amount of time, and it's a long list. So appreciate all of the time that you spent doing that review and feedback. This may sound a little random, but I have a comment around AI note-taking tools, which is a new thing coming up at county meetings. So this is just an FYI and for future reference in future meetings, but we've had some instances where someone in a meeting is using like an AI note-taking tool and it automatically is contacting the entire group, which is a problem for local government because it starts to veer into violating Open Public Meetings Act. So our request is, if you are someone who likes to use these tools, we ask that you don't use them during these meetings because it puts you at risk of violating OPMA. And if you do happen to receive, like I got an email blast that went to the whole group from like Otter AI. If you get something like that, just don't respond, because by responding, you then would be violating OPMA. So that is a new one for us, but just wanted to start broadcasting that to our advisory groups. Let's see. The other thing I just wanted to mention really quick, we have a few new project handouts that are for our general public information. So we have an FAQ document on the climate project, as well as a summary sheet on some of the climate projections. I've got copies up here, so if you'd like any of those during a break, I'm happy to hand those out. And then the other thing I would just mention is, I did also print, for those of you who did complete the survey to give feedback on the goals and policies, if you can't remember what you said, I do have copies of them, so I can give you yours if you would like that. So if that's helpful, let us know and we can hand that back to you. Okay, that's it for me. I can do that right now. Okay.
Okay. Although you are next.
Okay.
Yeah, so before we do get into the goals and policies discussion, we wanted to provide a little bit of context and grounding. So you'll remember that this group worked on the vision statement early at meeting 1, and the Environmental Justice Coalition has also been working on an equity lens, and the county has been getting community engagement through surveys. So Jenna's just going to walk through a little bit of that, just for you to keep in mind as we have the conversation, if it's helpful to consider, that community input and the equity lens and the vision for this work. It's a lot to hold in your head. We recognize that, so we don't need to have any kind of robust discussion on these, but it's just a reminder of kind of what's already been done to date as we walk into the goals and policies. So I'll hand it over to you, Jenna.
Great. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this may look familiar if you remember from a couple months ago, talking about a vision statement. You all agreed sort of tentatively, like this was our working version of it. So as a reminder, the purpose is to implement House Bill 1181 and create a climate chapter to support Clark County meeting its community's greenhouse gas emissions reduction, vehicle miles traveled reduction, resilience, and environmental justice goals. And the vision, I'm going to read the short version, the vision is that in 2045, Clark County will have good stewardship, better health equity, green jobs, transformed transportation, energy, and waste systems, and be prepared for uncertainty. So as a reminder, this is covering both pieces, the resilience and greenhouse gas emissions. So, but just going into our discussion today on resilience, we wanted to remind you of that. So let's go to the next slide. And then we have been doing some broader community engagement work. We had a survey go out. We also just had a community workshop this past weekend. So we are working on packaging this information in a more digestible way. I put a draft of the survey results summary in your meeting materials. it's a lot. So we've got a little bit more data coming in, but I just highlight some of the things that are standing out as I've been looking through the feedback we've been getting from the broader community. But we'll bring this back later on in the process. But smoky air is standing out as a top concern that people in the community have experienced recently themselves. When it comes to extreme temperatures, either hot or cold, people have identified health, high energy bills, disrupted jobs, school or childcare, damage to trees, vegetation, or crops as the types of impacts that they've experienced or someone in their family has experienced. In terms of types of disruption people described, there was a lot of stories around power outages and what that meant for their family, downed trees, meaning people got stuck at home, or cases of needing to evacuate for things like wildfire or when it was really hot and they needed to find somewhere cooler to go, disruption to transportation options, cancellation of work, school, childcare, medical appointments, social activities. A lot of people talked about the financial impacts of various natural hazards to themselves or their families. We've heard stories on people who were maybe more exposed because of the type of work they did, working outside, or sensitive family members with certain health conditions who were identified as being more vulnerable to certain types of severe weather events. And also heard stories of, certain day-to-day challenges that can make coping harder for some, such as limited financial resources. Next slide. And then we did also ask in our survey about what people needed, and this slide is just showing at a glance some of those things that came up, things like better access to air conditioning or air filtration or better insulation at their house or work or school, better internet connection when stuck at home. I'm not going to read all of these, but lower cost energy bills, safe options for refuge for people, pets, and livestock. So in the rural area, hearing about how do I evacuate my large livestock if I need to, more indoor recreation options when we can't get out, when going outside isn't realistic, and several other things here. So we're hearing a lot of feedback. I think a lot of what's on our list is covering, and helping address a lot of these things, but this is just a reminder of a lot of people in our community have been impacted when we have severe weather, and that want to keep this front and center as we plan for the future. And so one thing that staff will do in the future after you all, we have a list to study in more detail, is we'll look more closely at these and just see, are there any gaps? Is there anything we haven't addressed on this list? And we'll share that back with you all if we identify anything. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, and then the third update to just help with grounding this conversation is, you all may recall at our last meeting, we shared a draft version of the equity and environmental justice lens that we've been working on with our EJC group. We do have a final version based on their additional feedback, and the three main questions are listed out on this slide, which is who is most impacted by this issue or decision, both positively or negatively? What does the data tell us, considering both qualitative and quantitative data? And what are the ways in which a policy recommendation could be modified to enhance positive impacts or reduce negative impacts? And so again, this will come into play formally later on in the process where we consider the policies against these questions, but just wanting to share that as a reminder that equity is a key requirement of what has to come out of this process. So I think that's all I've got.
Okay, so now we are going to move into our goals and policies discussion. So as I said before, we are really hoping today to, as much as possible, kind of seek alignment on which of these goals and policies should move forward for further analysis to see if it's a good climate resilience strategy for unincorporated Clark County. So, or are there any that should drop off the list because this group agrees that that's not a good strategy for whatever reason, or maybe there are some modifications that can be made to some of these strategies, to some of these goals and policies. And I'll go through this a little bit more, but we're not looking for wordsmithing. We're really looking for, at a conceptual level, is this a good goal and policy? Because as we'll describe too, this is going to go through more review by the internal county team, technical staff, and others that need to review this list. And I'm going to hand it over to Dana in a minute to talk a little bit about what's been done since the last meeting and how we got here. But Brent, do you have a question?
Yes, this is Brent Marsden. My question is, there's a large number of these policies and suggestions. Is there any number that anyone is seeking to limit or expand? I mean, you know, I don't know how many there are, but for the final product, is there some sort of a numerical goal?
Okay. Yes, Brent, the final goal of policies is 35, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. We're actually closer than we appear, possibly. There's 46 right now. Okay, cool. Next slide, please, Nicole. Oh, yes, thank you. I'm Dana Hellman with Kappa Strategies. Nice to see everyone in person, if I haven't seen you in person before. So just a really quick recap of how we got here today, what we did in our last meeting. If you recall, at the 522 meeting, we brought what we're calling V1, version 1 of the goal and policy list. That was based on the feedback that we got from you all about your goals and policy suggestions through the previous CAG meeting and email follow-up. So in the May 22nd meeting, we showed you this version 1. You provided some feedback in that meeting, and then we also received dozens of additional comments by email between 5/22 and June 5th. And we have now incorporated all of those comments that were received up to June 5th into what you have in front of you today, and that's version 2 of our goal and policy list. So any specific suggestions to add or subtract any particular words or phrases that we received by email were made. Those were made directly into the goal and policy list. We also received, as we did in the first round of feedback, a lot of these more strategic or tactical kinds of suggestions that would be more relevant during implementation. So those have been added into the comment tracker, which you all have access to. Next slide, please. So when we developed the version 1, we were at 28 goals and 42 policies. We're currently at 28 goals and 46 policies because during the last round of feedback, we ended up making some changes. So this is just a quick recap slide, and Sylvia will cover more of this in detail. But of the goals and policies in the version 1 list, we flagged 3 policies and 1 goal that we feel like might be more suitable to the greenhouse gas sub-element rather than the climate resilience sub-element. So we'll ask you all your thoughts on possibly moving that off of this list and onto the greenhouse gas list when that comes around. We also flagged 7 policies as ones that could potentially be cross-referenced. So instead of including them, these are policies that exist in current planning documents. So we're thinking maybe rather than including them, again, in this resilience goal and policy list, we can rather include them as cross-references, and that would again allow us to move some off the list. We had 3 new policies that were added based on your feedback since the last meeting. And I will also just note we have 4 topics in kind of a parking lot right now, and these are just comments that came through that the project team would like to spend a little more time with and follow up later on. Some of you have received follow-up from us, but those topics are definitions of terms public development, covenants, and climate smart building practices, the topic of community interest in agriculture, water access possibilities for agriculture and what the county can and can't do there, and then also the place for mineral resources in our conversation about resilience goals and policies. So if you provided any of those comments, just know they're in our parking lot. We may be able to get to them in our discussion today, but if not, we'll be following up on those after some additional research or queries to you. And we'll turn it back to Sylvia now to talk about the survey.
And Nick, is your tent up related to the parking lot topics, or, okay, then I'll keep going and we'll get back to you if that's okay. Right now, okay, go ahead.
Nick Massey, I just went through the goals and they're not sorted with this survey link. They go Q1, G1, P1, G2, P1. It's not in any order of what we're seeing on there. So next time it'd be nice to have the same thing sorted as our Excel sheet so we can compare them.
All right. Well, I'll kind of go through what you all helped provide before this meeting and what we're going to do for our meeting today. So before today, a lot of you participated in a pre-meeting survey to help us understand whether you think the goals and policies promote climate resilience. And kind of the results of those surveys are here in this big packet here. And we're also going to be sharing this on screen when we get to discussion. And we also asked you to indicate if you think a goal or policy does not promote climate resilience, or if you have major concerns about it. So we want to talk about that today. And just as a reminder, we do define climate resilience as the ongoing process of anticipating, preparing for, and adapting to changes in climate and minimizing negative impacts to our natural systems, infrastructure, and communities. So good to kind of keep that definition in mind as we have our conversation. So next slide. So today's goal is really to walk through all of the goals and policies that we've grouped into what will hopefully be an organized discussion and kind of come to agreement on what to move forward with for further analysis. So on the next slide is just the overarching questions for today. So we'll be asking you for these groups of goals and policies. Should we move these forward for further analysis to see if they're good for Clark County as a climate resilience strategy for unincorporated Clark County? And are there any conceptual suggestions that you'd want to make that would maybe improve it so that you would feel comfortable with it moving forward for analysis? And in some cases, we may be removing some of these goals and policies if they don't seem like they're appropriate. So those are kind of the three options. Yes, move it forward. It needs a few little conceptual tweaks to make it work, or take it off the list. That's kind of the level of input we're looking for today. And I should stress, if you think any of these goals and policies are amazing, wonderful, you love them, that is great. And we actually don't need to hear that today. That just means we're moving it forward, but we're not looking for discussion about why these policies are good. We're kind of just helping to narrow down a list to move forward, if that makes sense. Okay. So the way we'll move forward with the discussion, this is just an organizing principle because there's so many of them, is first we want to talk about two groups of policies that are a little bit special. One are some policies that could be cross-referenced because they actually exist in other plans, and we'll talk about what that means. Second is group two, which are a group of goals and policies that are possibly better suited for the greenhouse gas reduction conversation and that part of the climate element. And then group three were goals and policies that you all flagged as needing high priority discussion through the survey. So we want to make sure we get through those first. And then group four are a list of medium priority. Some of you had concerns with them or really wanted to discuss them. And then group five was a little bit lower priority. The goals and policies that are in group 6 and 7, almost all of you said these are fine. So for those, we are going to just do a quick check and see if we can just move them forward as they are written. So that's kind of how we're going to move through this. And those are ordered by group in the Excel sheet you have in front of you. And we have a next step slide, but I do want to go over next steps about what's going to happen after today because I think it might help with the conversation today. So after today, the list is going to be further reviewed and refined by partner agency staff and the technical team. The Environmental Justice Coalition will also take a look at it, and county staff. So there is going to be a little bit more looking at this list before it then moves forward into analysis. And I'm not sure if Jenna, if you wanted to speak to any of that a little bit now or later.
Okay. So yeah, just to build on what Sylvia said, we have only so much budget with our consultants, and so the narrowing today will give us the list to analyze in more detail so that we can bring more information back to you all about those policies, right? So things like, does the county even have authority to do this? Or there's been some questions around cost, right? Things like that. So we can analyze in a few different criteria each policy, but we need to sort of define what the list is that we're going to do that on. And then this additional review, like county staff, we're going to need to get it through our legal team and things like that. We want to make sure you all can see the revisions that the county would like to suggest, or that for our broader public engagement, we want to bring it back to you all before you are making a final decision. So you can take all those extra pieces into consideration, before you make your final recommendation, versus us waiting till you're done, then going to our legal team and they say, oh, you can't do this, or something like that. So that's our goal, is to spend a few more months, doing that additional work so that you all have at least the amount of information we can provide back to you to consider in your final deliberation. So that's what's coming next.
All right, well, let's go ahead and take down the slides. Is everyone clear on what we're doing today? Pretty much. Any questions about the process? Does it sound like an okay process that we can do? Okay, I have faith we're going to get through it all. I just know it. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen, which is a replica of what you have in front of you, except that it also includes a little space here for discussion notes if we come up with any. Okay, so we're going to first go through group 1, which is a list of policies that actually appear in other plans that are already adopted and exist in Clark County. And the proposal by the team is, and from some of the CAG members actually, was a proposal to, instead of including them in the climate element, to just cross-reference them because they already exist. And that would make more space to then analyze some of the other new goals and policies rather than analyzing ones that have already been adopted, and would possibly reduce redundancy and maybe confusion within the planning documents. So I could go through these and read them out loud, but maybe instead I would encourage you all to take a quick scan of them for a minute, and then we can do a check to see if folks would feel comfortable with just cross-referencing them. And Ann, I see your 10 card up, but I'm going to give folks just a second to scan, and then I'll get to you. Oh, thank you. Actually, so in the group, it's G7, G14. It's basically everything that's on the first page, plus a couple on the second, or sorry, no, they're all on the first page. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. And if you're online as a CAG member, these were all included in the Excel document that you received. Let me see if I can shrink the screen so we can see them all at once, too. On the screen. I'm going to make it a little small, but. Okay, Ann, go ahead. Oh, and reminder to say your name when you speak also.
Yes. Sorry, Ann Foster. So does it make any sense to hear from Jose and Jenna from community planning as to how significant there may be differences in the wording or intent of any of these that already exist within the plan update or the plan? Is that getting too complicated?
Well,
or?
I think I can, at a high level, answer. All of these policies, they already exist in an adopted plan. So whether or not they are a part of the climate element, they still are existing policies that the county has, in whether it's our comp plan or our natural hazard mitigation plan or our parks plan or something like that. So whether or not they end up even being mentioned in any way, they already exist at the county. So I think the reason to consider referencing them is that I think there's two main reasons in my head. One is if we in our climate element say, see policy 10 in over here in this other part of the comp plan, we get to say it's part of our climate element, which means if there's potential funding opportunity or something in the future, it potentially opens a door in the future for funding resources for something that, like climate funding, that if we didn't link it to the climate element, it would be a harder case to make it was a climate, like resilience policy. So that's one practical reason to reference it, where we would just say, see policy XYZ in the natural hazard mitigation plan. And the other reason is that in sort of showing our work in that our resilience sub-element is, addressing all these things. If we don't reference it, we don't get to say we're addressing this thing in this, even though it already exists. So I don't know if I said that very well, but those are reasons to write a reference to it. If that is too complicated and we don't even feel like we need that, we could just drop them off the list, and they exist already. There are already policies that the county is implementing anyway. So I don't want to say too much about that, but that's hopefully at least at a high level why we were proposing to reference them.
Can I ask a follow-up? Can I ask a follow-up? Is that okay? So I guess what I'm after is, let's use as an example, G24, protect groundwater and surface water as a resource for drinking water, et cetera. Is there something in the comprehensive plan now that says protect groundwater and surface water?
That is the exact language already in the comp plan in another chapter. Yeah, so these are all exact wording that already exists.
Okay.
So, unless Dana is going to correct me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, Jenna. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, just for clarification, so let me go through all these. There are a few of these where, based on this group's previous feedback, we did maybe add a word or two to some of these. So they're essentially true to what already exists, but perhaps have an extra word. So I will specify exactly which is which. So Goal 7, Policy 1 is identical to what's in the comprehensive plan. Goal 14, Policy 2, we added the phrases species composition and species conservation. So I'm wondering maybe if we do a cross-reference, if we can note that suggestion. But in Goal 15, Policy 1, we added including transportation infrastructure. Goal 15, Policy 3 is identical to what is in the comprehensive plan. Goal 21, Policy 2, we added commuter rail and prioritizing electric rail when possible. Goal 24, Policy 3 is identical to what appears in the comprehensive plan. And Goal 28, Policy 5 is identical to what appears in the Clark Regional Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Terry Tolan. I would say we should reference as much as we can off of this list. It makes sense. And then for funding, I hadn't even thought of that. That would make additional icing on the cake. But to get them referenced out of this list would be beneficial, I believe.
I work in specifications all the time, and it just scares the heck out of me to reference a whole bunch of stuff, because then you got to go to 40 different places to make sure you're correct on it. So that's the reason that I wouldn't want to see that in there, is because it's already hard enough to find everything you have to do to have to go to another place to find it. So that's my comment on that.
Okay, so you'd prefer not to reference them? And Dave?
I guess is it my turn to talk about G21, the commuter, to add regional rail to passenger commuter and commuter rail, and also freight should be part of the rail system. We already have some freight. We need to add more freight with the rail system. And I like that we're prioritizing electric rail when possible. That's a good addition.
And Sunrise?
So I guess, so I'm Sunrise O'Mahony, and I guess I need to clarify, Jenna, before you take a bite. Because I agree with both of the comments, but where I'm a little concerned about is the funding. Did I hear you right in saying that if we cross-reference it, that may limit our ability to ask for funding for this, or is it the opposite?
It was the opposite. It was more the idea that, like, at the moment, there's a lot of climate funding available, so it's much easier in a grant application to say, look, this is in our climate chapter, to show that the funding is applicable, whereas if we don't mention it, it may be harder to get it. So, I mean, there's no guarantees around that, but the idea was referencing could potentially increase funding
So
options.
referencing will count in that way, possibly referencing it. So basically, we have three options: have it completely not mentioned, or we reference it, or we keep it on here. And both the keeping it on and the referencing both have the ability to include it into potential funding asks. Okay. Okay.
Noelle Lovern. So if we cross-reference, do these count towards our 35?
I'm on, okay. No, so, and I actually misspoke before, Brent and everyone, we're actually at 45 currently, and we're aiming to be at 35. So if we were to take away these 7 cross-references and the 3 greenhouse gas suggestions, we would be at our goal of 35. So if we make them a cross-reference, they don't count toward the 35 goal.
And we're done. Let's go.
All right.
So I think that was a longer answer of saying they will not count, if they're cross-referenced, they do not count towards.
So no matter what, they do not count. Like even if
They count now.
okay.
They're currently included in the count of 45.
Oh.
That they're still on this master list that we're looking at right now of 45, but our goal is to get down to 35. So this is one way to get down to 35. If we don't move these, we would have to cut some policies elsewhere. I'll just float that.
But if we keep them, they count towards the 35.
Yes, if you keep them, yes.
Okay.
Hello. Oh, sorry. Didn't even say a word that made sense. My name is Monica Zazueta. So I was wondering if we don't count them, would the wording that you all put in not be added then to the Growth Management Act that's already in place?
I think maybe Jenna, can you speak to that if there's a way to reference some small wording changes in the cross-reference?
Yeah, so it's going to depend. Like, we're not going to be able to adjust wording in the natural hazard mitigation plan. Like, it's a separate plan, separate process. If it's something already in the existing comp plan, like in a different chapter, we could probably go look and see if that's doable, but we'll have to double check it doesn't mess with something in that chapter. So we'll have to do a little bit more work to check. So possibly, but I can't guarantee that.
For me, I would like to know that. So then at the next meeting or something, or whenever you can, so that I know, because I don't want to just say, no, they're fine the way they are, or whatever, and the words that you all added aren't going to be added. Like, I think those words are very important. So thank you.
And I think that's probably not an answer we're going to have today, right? And yeah, go ahead, Janet.
Janet Konefsky. As we're looking through these, making a quick slice makes sense at first glance, but in today's unintended climate, where funding is not always guaranteed and funding is abound, I wouldn't abandon an opportunity that this provides us to get grant funding, especially since it could be limited. There are options where it could be pretty limited depending on what happens nationally. So I think giving ourselves the opportunity to obtain funds and grant funds, this is going to be needed. We are going to need to point to it.
Cool. Don.
Don Steinke. There's another policy that's later on in the list that's already existing in the county, and that's the stormwater program. I know we have one. My friend sued Clark County to require them to develop one and get a stormwater permit 27 years ago, and I was on the first Clean Water Commission, and so it exists. And I don't know that we need to have it again, although it might need more money, but it's an existing program, unless they canceled it since then.
And which one were you referring to?
There are two places within the rest of the document where it references stormwater, and I'll mention them later when we get there, if necessary.
Okay, okay.
But we do have a stormwater program.
Great, thank you.
It's been going on for 25 years.
Okay. Sunrise, and then Noel.
I guess now that I understand more of it, idea of kind of where I think we should go on this is that I agree with what Monica said, that especially looking at G14, but wanting to know what the difference is. I was trying to imagine G14 and what it actually is written in the comp plan if it doesn't say species composition and species conservation. So my proposal, I guess, would be that any of them that don't have a word changing in it, that we cross-reference those, or and then the others, since we don't know right now, it's almost like a placeholder to say those are a maybe. We can, knowing more and bring that back once we know what that wording is. While I agree with the idea of things being lost and, having to go and cross-reference, I think at the expense of having to cut out other things, I would vote more to go that way.
Noel?
I would say I align with Janet a little bit on this, in that if these are already policies in other plans and things, moving them into a position where we can receive funding for them would be ideal.
Just real quick, am my understanding, Nick Massey, sorry, am I understanding that if we leave these in here, then they will take off something later? We're limited to 35, and so if we keep all these 10, then we have to cut 10 more often. Does everybody understand that? And this is the first round that there was everybody wanted these taken off, so we got more important things coming later. But is there a little bit more there? That's not what okay, that's what you're saying, Brent?
You want to explain what cross-referencing means again?
Yes. So just to clarify, hopefully, we have currently 45 policies on the list, and we're right now talking about the possibility that 7 of those could be a cross-reference. So they would still appear in the climate sub-element, they'd be referenced, but they wouldn't go toward the count of total policies that we're working to move into further analysis for today. Is that?
Nick Massey, I support it then. That's fine. We can keep them in there. I agree with Janet and with Noel that all the funding we can get is great.
Is there a problem with 45 policies, or just like we just need 35?
It's as we introduced at the last meeting, we just have limited capacity on doing additional analysis. So the thought is if we just reference them, they're already existing policies, they already are adopted. So I think we're okay not doing the additional analysis on those, but still referencing them given that they already exist. So it's more up the practical on we only have so much funding to analyze further. Yeah.
Hi, this is Gabriela.
Hello. Go ahead, Gabriela.
Thank you. I agree with cross-referencing them. So we are at the 35. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela. So I'm going to see, and I hear different comments here, but I'm just going to look around the table and see if folks would be okay with cross-referencing these 7 elements. We can always go back in today's conversation. This is kind of conceptual alignment right now. We still have several other groups of policies to go through. But if you agree generally with cross-referencing these, if you can just raise your name, Tent, and if you're online, if you can raise your hand if you're a CAG member, if you're comfortable with cross-referencing these, and I'll do a quick check.
Sylvia?
Yes, go ahead.
This is Brent. Again, the language changes, cross-referencing them with holding those language changes, in whatever, but, because you're going to find out, what we can do with the language, because some of that language is probably an improvement. So, but overall, yeah, get rid of them for now.
So cross-referencing with the understanding that there's going to be a great intent to include that additional language, but the county has to see kind of how feasible that is. Okay. Go ahead, Nick.
Again, if we go changing languages on policies on something, those are going to have to be part of this, because it's going to be a change in code from some other code too. It'll take the precedence over that, right?
Sorry, I think the idea was to see if we can change it in the other place. So we would only be able to change things that are in some other part of the comp plan, so that, to avoid the duplicate or slightly different language, we just want to double check, okay, if we add this word over in this other chapter. So, does that make sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm back okay with it
Okay,
again.
thank you. And, all right, guys, I'll take these name tents, and then hopefully we can say okay to this, Monica?
I just wanted to say that in, life, sometimes there needs to be a change, there needs to be an addition and everything, and we need to be able to just grow and learn from each other. And so if adding language could help strengthen our community, I think we should really put our efforts into that. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Did you still have comments, Don or Brent? Okay. And Sharon, you're just voting. Okay. I think I saw that everyone is comfortable with this. Woohoo! Okay. So we are cross-referencing these 7 goals and policies that are in Group 1 with, hope that some of that language can be included that was added by CAG members. Great. Okay, so now we're going to move into Group 2. So that is at the top of page 2 in your packet. And there's goal 11 and goal 12, G23, G11 and G23. And so it's goal language plus policy language. And the proposal is that these seem more appropriate for the greenhouse gas reduction list rather than climate resilience. And that we would hope to move that into the greenhouse gas element for discussion there and analysis there. Anything to add, Dana? No, okay.
Oh, thank you, Nicole. Just in case it's a little hard to read in your printout here, we're suggesting that goal 11, the whole goal, and the one policy that goes with it be moved. And then for goal 23, we're looking at both policy 1 and policy 2.
I'll see if there are any comments and thoughts on this approach, and then we can see if folks would be comfortable with moving these over to greenhouse gas. Go ahead, Sunrise.
So Sunrise, Omaha, just a quick question on these 2. So is there room on theirs? Do they have enough room for these? Or are they also facing the same discussion and now we're giving them 2 more?
We have not begun the development of the greenhouse gas goal and policy list yet, so I think it's wide open, but Tracy, you might have a thought on that.
I'm on Jenna's. There we go. So my team will be supporting the development of that list, and we have not yet developed that list, but we will be facing same sort of constraints on, and I don't know exactly the number, but, you know, we can't just, throughout the entire plan, we can't include everything because there is certain capacity.
So there is a chance that if we say to move this to the greenhouse gas group, that they cut these and these are not actually anywhere.
So when we're done with the conversation today, we're not completely done with resilience. So if we say, for example, these are more appropriate to consider during our discussion on greenhouse gas emissions mitigation, then when we review greenhouse gas emissions mitigation, we eliminate them. We will track that these did come up in the resilience policy, and then, you know, and determine if they are important enough to not be on the greenhouse gas emissions mitigation reduction list, but important enough to bring back for resilience.
And Janet.
Janet Konefsky, are we able to provide you the comments that we have, the notes that we have on these separately, so we can include those in? Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so I'll do a check to see if folks would be comfortable moving these to greenhouse gas. If you would be comfortable with that, then just go ahead and raise your name tent or raise your hand in the Zoom platform. Okay, I see Alana. Do you have any thoughts on this one? Oh, there we go. You raised your hand. Okay, well, I see everyone's hands raised. So if we move these, great. Thank you. All right, now we get to move on to the hard stuff. We will take a break, yeah. Maybe after this next group, we could take a break. We didn't have a break on the agenda. We just figured we would take it somewhere in this time. Yeah. Oh, okay. Do folks want to take a break right now, or? Okay, yeah. So this next list had high priority for CAG member discussion. Several of you said that you had concerns about it or just wanted to discuss it today. So we want to, I think I would just open it up if anybody has a certain goal that they want to start with first. There's how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in this group. So I'll just ask a CAG member, you know, if you said you had a concern about this or wanted to discuss it, why? And let's see if we can either decide to move it forward, adjust it slightly to be better to move forward, or take it off the list. And Dawn, I see your tent up, so go ahead.
Regarding Goal 4, Policy 1, where it says hydrogen fuel cells, I would like to have an adjective in front of that, say green and just. Can't just use any hydrogen, and we can't just use any green hydrogen. It has to be just hydrogen. And the California Environmental Justice Alliance has their definition of it. But basically, you don't want to say we're going to burn more fossil fuels over here, or make hydrogen out of methane, so it has to be green. But then we also don't want to take somebody's electricity that is green away from them to make hydrogen if they need it. So it should only be surplus. So that's another adjective I would add, is just using surplus electricity. And then I have another one on the G5, Policy 1.
Well, actually, maybe let's just focus on one at a time, if that's okay. Dawn, do you mind holding your comment? I think it might just be easier to stay organized. So I'll say I see number 10 up. Are these for Goal 4? Okay. Why don't you go ahead first, Andrea?
Thank you. Andrea Smith. My main concern with Goal 4 would just be, I guess, the wording with placing lines underground. It's extremely expensive And I would just like to see something that reiterates more of an incentivized, if that's the route we're going, rather than a mandate, because that will definitely hit housing affordability.
Okay, thank you. And I will ask, as it's written now, does it sound like a mandate? Or are there words that would make it sound less like a mandate, or is it just discomfort with having the placing lines underground completely?
Yeah, I mean, maybe like I don't want to wordsmith, but maybe putting something in there like incentivizing the placement of underlying ground or underlying power infrastructure.
Okay. Maybe incentivizing instead. Go ahead, Nick. Oh, thank you. So Noel and then Nick.
Noelle Lovern. I just had a question, like, how are the utility companies feeling about this specific kind of policy? I don't know that we're there yet, but just, I mean, I'm not the expert on utilities, so would like the experts to weigh in.
Terry Toland, on that note, I'm supplying backup generators. Who would be doing that? The utilities? Is that the intent on this one?
I will leave that to someone else to answer. My computer's dying.
And as I look at that, it doesn't specify fuel for those backup generators. If you're burning diesel, then you're back into producing greenhouse gas.
I guess just a quick follow-up on that was another question of mine, is who's funding some of that? I'm sure the utility companies would want to weigh in on where that money's going to come from.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not paying for it, we are.
Okay. And Sharon?
Sharon Ferguson. Yes, when I was reading through this one, I thought, it's not that they're not all good ideas, it just seems they're highly detailed. And I don't know, it seems like maybe we just go with the first sentence and let the rest go, but is there any other way to get it into the comp plan? Probably not. So that was only, because it seems, is it plausible? And who is going to do this? How is it going to happen? But as I said, they're great ideas, but how feasible is it for, you know, the city or a county to do this?
Okay. And Nick?
Again, I'm going to talk about specifications. And the one thing that will drive up costs through the ceiling is when an architect specifies one certain item that goes into a building without fair competition. And we have to look at costs of these things. And I realize you have a explanation right now, Don, but technology changes so fast that just to put in one single definition of methane, of hydrogen power, to me it's kind of short-sighted because we don't know what's coming in the future. If we could come up with some kind of compromise language that doesn't include just that one thing, that would help you, Don, to say what you want to say on that we have some type of spec to follow. But again, I don't want to regulate competition for people wanting to use a different thing to create this either.
Okay. Maybe Don, any thoughts on that?
If we're talking about backup, it doesn't matter if it pollutes. It's backup to the electrical system, and so that's okay because it's an emergency, but it's not day in and day out. And I was thinking of hydrogen fuel cells for, maybe I was misunderstanding to think that this was hydrogen fuel cells and hydrogen as a substitute for things that could be electrified. And so I'll have to think more about that.
Go ahead, Brent.
Okay, Brent Marsden. Now, we're talking about these like they are laws and detailed regulations, but what I see in the language here is these are suggestions, they're encouragements, they're ideas. These aren't laws, rules, and regulations. So these are ideas to either support or not support some sort of thing. They're not laws. They're not multi-page, you know. So it says, you know, like placing lines underground, it says, work with them to improve or such as. That's not a requirement to place things underground. It's a suggestion. So I think there might be a little confusion between these policies that are encouraging things or suggesting things and then absolute requirements.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not sure which tents are still up or if they're up from before. Okay, yours is still up. Go ahead.
I liked what Sharon said about keeping the first line. The only thing I would say in the first line, because I do think it's rather specific, placing lines underground, if we could just maybe say something like optimizing engineering of power lines or lines, because we have no idea where that technology or engineering might go in the future as well.
Dave?
Yes, this is Dave Rowe. On G4, I think we should talk about vehicle to grid in the backup system. Example is, and I'm working on now, is in Lake Oswego. We have a rail car that's going to have a battery, 80 kilowatt battery, and we only run 2 days a week, and we're setting for 5 days a week. So those 5 days we can have a PGE use that power until we need it. So vehicle to grid is something that probably should be mentioned in that G4 statement.
Yeah, Don?
Don Steinke. I'll retract my concerns. Thank you, Nick. Because if it's an emergency, this is about resilience, and resilience is about emergencies rather than day in and day out uses. So I'm okay with it.
Okay. And Monica?
Monica Zazweta. I wanted to just say about the competition. I know that's the way of the world right now, but I hope someday that we actually work in a cooperative manner and then come together and see that we don't need to always have to be competing with each other in order to survive on our planet, because who we say we are impacts who we become. And so if we're more holistic view on things, I think that's going to really help us feel better all together. But I wanted to say about the hydrogen cells. There's actually a podcast called The Great Simplification on YouTube, and there's a man named Paul Martin who talks about hydrogen on there, the decarbonization problem. And I encourage everyone to check it out, but it explores the pros and cons and realities of hydrogen as a potential energy solution. And it provides limitations to it. And so I would like to have more research done on the hydrogen part of that wording, but also I remember when you were saying how we want overarching policy ideas. And so I agree with having wording that makes it like an umbrella of like, okay, let's do this, but not have really specifics. But I like the ideas of like saying like, oh, as or like this, but not having that be the end all be all of what we're going to do since technology does improve. So,
all right, thanks, Monica. So I wonder if anyone has a suggestion for how to change this language at a conceptual level to meet kind of what we're hearing here about maybe it's a little too specific, maybe it's, and a reminder, the question here is, should this be analyzed as a good climate resilience strategy? Not, is this a good climate resilience strategy? And I saw, Andrea, your tent went up.
Yeah, I would just suggest maybe just using, like other people had said, the first part of the first sentence with just work with energy utilities to improve the safety and the reliability of infrastructure vulnerable to climate change, and leave it at that, so it's kind of more open-ended. So once this becomes part of the comp plan, then the people that are working on those actual things can like, not be so bound by specifics.
Okay. Brent?
Brent Marsden. Okay, with this level of discussion here, isn't it fairly obvious that this should be further analyzed?
That's a good point. Would folks support just changing this? For some reason, I can't change it on the screen right now, but just using that first part of the sentence like Andrea described and just shortening it, making it higher level and analyzing it in that sense. All right, I'm seeing mostly approval. And online, wondering if Elena and Gabrielle are okay with that as well. Okay, great. Then we will suggest that move forward. Oh, here we go. I can do that. Okay, great. Well, we got through one. Maybe let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to try to get to the next one more quickly. Perfect, thank you. Quick break, let's get back at 6, it's like 10-minute break. 6:55. Keep on going here. Okay. So we're going to resume talking about some of these kind of higher priority goals and policies. And again, I think I'll just lean on the community advisory group to see if there's any from this group 3 that you want to flag for discussion, and if there's, a reason why it should not be analyzed, or if you have concerns or suggestions to improve it, to move it for analysis. Justin, go ahead.
Thank you. Justin Wood here. Just comments on G5 here. So both policies. Really love the first policy, provide assistance for maintenance and rehabilitation of housing for Clark County residents. The second part, I'm reading more as a mandate, and design new housing with mechanical and or passive cooling and heating capacity. Yet, we see in the other policy right below, incentivize the inclusion of passive and or energy efficient mechanical cooling systems in all new housing developments. So those seem to be in direct conflict with each other. So I wanted to point that out. And with the first one, maybe we want to eliminate and design new housing, and replace it with the last sentence of the second policy here, incentivize the inclusion of. So that would be my idea for wordsmithing. I know those have been some suggestions from other community advisory members. And then a question for the project advisory team and community planning. When we say retrofit existing buildings, is that a mandate, is that a requirement, or is it encourage, incentivize? More context there would be great.
Yeah, Jen.
Sure. I'm kind of just reading it as a statement, but it's not really clear on beyond that. So I think if you want to be more clear, you could make a suggestion on that. If not, I think there's nothing specific about how that would be done. It's more just a value statement that the county would support retrofitting.
Okay, and then just to piggyback off on that, my suggestion would be for G5, policy G5 here, I would say we eliminate the wording here and design new housing with mechanical and or passive cooling and heating capacity, and replace it with the second sentence of the second policy here for G5, and replace it with incentivize the inclusion of passive and or energy efficient mechanical cooling systems in housing developments. And I did want to provide a little rationale on that we have some of the most aggressive building and energy codes here for new construction in Washington State, and the last thing we want to do is increase those costs for new housing. And then again, with the question with retrofitting, I have some other comments, but I'll leave it there.
Okay. Thanks, Justin. Just one thought or comment. I'm curious how this lands for you. The difference between the goal and policy is that the goal is like the ideal vision and the policy is the actionable piece. So that's why you see incentivize as sort of an actionable bit of language in the policy, but not in the goal. Does that feel okay with that in mind, or?
I would make it very explicit. How it reads right now with the goal, you could interpret that as a mandate and design. So that means you're designing new construction there. So I would be more comfortable with incentivize for that goal, and then leaving the second policy kind of where it is right now. So that would be there. And then I will say just also a comment here. We really heard from the Environmental Justice Committee. I attended their last meeting, and then we also heard from the community survey group the importance of air conditioning, and some really important thoughts around that and keeping residents cool. Did want to point out for the project group and maybe a potential policy we could pursue here as a group is subsidized air cooling units and the prohibition of restrictions on air cooling units in existing dwellings. I'll point to Cooling Portland program paid for by the Portland Clean Energy Community Benefits Fund as a great program that's used in the city of Portland. Oregon Senate Bill 1536, which prohibits landlords from restricting portable cooling devices. And Spokane's recently passed Heat, Health, and Safety Ordinance, which will take effect in the middle of July and codifies a tenant's right to air conditioning. So wanted to kind of really broach those thoughts here because it is really a part of energy efficiency, weatherization, and passive cooling and heating, and I really wanted to inject that in the conversation as well.
So I looked at passive homes. I don't know if that's what we're talking about when we're talking about passive mechanical heating and cooling, but read an article or a couple articles that showed that passive homes are actually 7 to 15% more expensive to build. And just looking at that at like a $550,000 home, that's $85,000 added to it. So thinking about that, and I know we're not doing the work of the Environmental Justice Coalition, but thinking in terms of affordability, equity, and looking, are we able to provide some information like that to the Environmental Justice Coalition to have them be looking at like what are some of these policies, how is it going to affect some of the populations that we're trying to advocate for? I think affordability, there's a couple policies within this particular section that I feel like have some affordability concerns. So.
Okay, that's helpful. And is that yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add, that sounds like a great thing for us to study and analyze. Like, right? Like, something might be a great idea, but understanding some of the trade-offs, right? The pros and cons of those ideas seems like a great thing for us to analyze so that you all and the EJC can look at it, right? And that may change the calculus of what is a higher priority or not. So I think even if maybe you're not sure about a policy itself, right, or have some concerns, if you're open to it being analyzed, I would encourage, keeping it on the list for that sake.
Thank you.
Erin?
Yes, I just wanted to point out, Justin had this question, and I've heard other members also voice it. And it's a question really for Jenna to further explain, but the difference between comp plan goals and policies and building codes and land use codes, those are, building codes and land use codes are requirements, generally speaking, but comp plan goals and policies are just that, they're goals. And I think there's some confusion, people reading these, like Justin had you ask Jenna whether or not, she read that as a requirement, and you read it, you said it as a statement, and that's what they are. They're not necessarily requirements as you would find in a planning code or a land use code. And maybe, that's informative to members of the group, that difference between them and how we approach these.
Okay, thank you. Dawn and then Andrea. And then we'll see if maybe we can find a proposal for figuring out if these, if Goal 5 and Policy 1 can somehow be changed to make it more comfortable to move forward. Go ahead, Don.
This is Don Steinke. I like what Justin said at the beginning, incentivize the inclusion of the things we want. But I need to make a little comment. I first appeared before the Clark County Council in 1978 during the energy crisis. And I said, strengthen your building codes. They didn't pay much attention. And so now we are back to G5 where it says, provide assistance for maintenance and rehabilitation. So for the last 50 years and for the next 50 years, we're going to continually have to provide assistance for the maintenance and rehabilitation of housing that wasn't built to the best codes possible, which brings me to affordability. Affordability includes more than just the upfront cost. It includes the operating cost. And a study done by RMI in San Francisco and Seattle said that an all-electric home, now this is for new construction, I don't know about retrofits, for a new home, all-electric home is at cost parity with a home that's not all-electric. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. And Andrea?
Yeah, Andrea Smith. So I would like to see something about informing the consumer, educating them, because I think a lot of times we focus on incentivizing or requiring a lot of these things, but then the homeowner, the renter is, keeping the door open for their dog all day, and so some of those gains that you're getting in energy efficiency aren't actually being realized. And so I think we need to have a holistic, I don't know, education program from the county or something if this is going to be important so that people know how they can use their equipment and how to maintain it and whatnot in a way that's helping us practically meet the goals that we're setting.
And are you suggesting including that language here within the goal and policy?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Right. So I'm going to see if maybe marrying, and I know, Monica, I'm going to try to move us forward. Do you have a quick comment?
Monica says what I put in my notes was provide assistance for maintenance and rehabilitation of housing. Well, I think we should also, with that, provide an opportunity for where the community can learn how to be the people to provide the maintenance and rehabilitation. So really make it a holistic view. So thank you.
Okay, so kind of staying with that education piece. Okay, that's great. So maybe if we were to include the education piece, conceptually, we can figure out the exact wordsmithing for that. And Justin, make sure that the goal language doesn't sound so mandatey. Maybe, I'm hearing a little bit of concern from the technical side on using the word incentivize in the goal itself, just because of parity with the way things are written in other places. But it's finding some kind of language to meet your concern.
Yeah, I totally understand what Dana's saying, that it's a goal, and it sounds like it's a statement, not a requirement. I understand that, but I think that could be read when you hear that design, specifically that word design. So that would just be my comment. It's just, again, maybe the incentivized part in the goal instead.
Got it. Okay. So maybe with those two changes, the education and softening the design piece, would folks be okay with moving G5 and the G5 policy 1 forward for analysis? Yeah. I'm looking for affirmatives, and I'll check online too with Elena and Jessica. Thank you for joining, and Gabriela. Okay, thank you. And Jessica, you might not be able to raise your hand, but *6, I think, is the raise hand button. Oh, she said yes in the chat. Great, thank you. Okay, then we'll move that one forward. Thank you. Were there any that were not that were not comfortable with moving that one forward? John? Okay, I apologize, I didn't see that. And Sunrise, okay.
It seems like a goal should be to design new housing with mechanical and passive cooling and heating capacity. It seems like we should.
Can you say more about why, Don?
I see a lot about efficiency by design in the literature. And so to rule out design, now maybe design doesn't require the expensive features that are concerning, but it seems like we should design them to be as efficient as possible. And the PAE building is designed in Portland by engineers who tried to make the world's most energy, well, it's a net energy neutral building, or net zero energy building in Portland. It's 5 stories high, and I think that they did it without subsidies, and that it can be done, and they want to be an example for the rest of the world. They've already had the city staff at Portland and Vancouver already taken a tour down there to see their facility, and that would be not a bad idea for us. I have not done it, but they've been open for 3 years, and that's a model of what could be done. And so I don't know what to recommend exactly. I don't have all the answers, but it seems like we should be designing them so that don't require auxiliary heat all the time. It doesn't require energy inputs all the time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Sunrise?
I think I kind of pretty much would have said what Don said, but I think for me, I'm having a hard time understanding why we would not put design in there. I'm hearing you, Justin, but I don't think I'm following maybe why. To me, we need, in my opinion, we need to be designing houses with, I would have added in there the energy efficient home. I would have added that in the goal, but looking at them together, I don't see how you can leave that out. I think softening what is so critical and how we're heating and cooling our homes and buildings is critical when it comes to climate change, and softening it doesn't do any good. In the end, our planet will be gone. We need to be making these designs. So I guess I don't see how taking that out, what that does, and how that would even, I know you'd wordsmith it, but I guess I'm missing how that just, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Andrea, and then Sharon.
Yeah, Andrea, just to follow up on the conversation that's occurring, I think we all need to remember that, like, our building codes are already going towards net zero, and there's a national movement as well. So I think a lot of this is already being done, and I don't know that in the future, and, you know, the 20 years after we adopt a comp plan, that this will necessarily be, like, ripe for consideration. So just kind of keeping that in mind, that there's an entire movement trying to get to net zero. I think it's by, like, 2040 or 2045.
Okay. And Sharon.
Just briefly, it's just, I support keeping the word design in for the reasons that Rice had mentioned.
Okay. All right, I'm going to check again if folks would be okay with keeping the word design then and adding the education piece and moving these forward for analysis. One more thing. Yeah, go ahead.
What I heard Justin say, what I thought Justin was saying is not necessarily that design bothers him, but incentivizing design rather than the command to design. I think that's what I was hearing, so I don't think it's about removing the word design.
Okay. So there's a suggestion to maybe instead say to provide design guidelines. That. Okay. We'll go ahead, Nick, and then maybe we'll hear the suggestion.
This is still America. We have the right to build what we want here with incorporating the design aspects of something. But to tell me that you get to tell me what my house looks like, I am not interested in that, because I want to have the freedom to do that. And if we incorporate these design elements within there, that would be great. But to tell me that this is, and quite frankly, that's what happened with the last reiteration of the plan that we battled against. They wanted to put design protocols on us. Help me if I'm wrong here, Noel, but they said we had to, this is the house that we want you to build. And it affected affordability horribly on that stuff. And we have to also include everybody that wants to live in the house in the future too. And I just think that we need to realize that taking away these personal liberties is going to affect us in the future.
Thank you. Dana?
Okay. What about instead of design new housing with mechanical cooling, we say provide design guidelines? So it's using that same kind of provide language. It's more suggesting a guideline. It still has design in there, but it maybe sounds less forceful. Would that work for folks?
Going off what Sunrise is saying is that this is a very critical time, and so if we have to look at the whole picture. We have to look at, like, how are our kids going to survive? Like, we need the clean air, we need clean water, we need clean soil, and we need to make sure that we're not just taking all of Mother Earth's resources and using it for our time right now on this planet. There needs to be some things that we have to give up in order to make sure that we're healthy and that our future generations are healthy. And so I feel that what she was saying, and it's like we need to make this move, and to say with the guidelines and everything, we'll have the guidelines be something that is sustainable, that is regenerative, that is rewilding or something, but that will help our own health and our Mother Earth's health. My comment on that. Thank you.
Analyze this, and not about the merits of whether designing homes with passive cooling and heating is necessarily what you would support. So with this, would this change of providing the design guidelines, which still, of course, is allowing for designing new housing, but it not sounding as mandateful, would that work for folks? Right. I'm seeing yes. Up from Brent, maybe? Are you okay with that change? You don't care. Okay. Abstain. That is completely fair. I appreciate the honesty. Okay. All right, well, it sounds like that can move forward with that change. Thank you all. And Jessica, did you have your hand up with a comment?
Hi, yes, I hope, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Oh, okay. Hi, this is Jessica Brown. Yeah, I was just, my Wi-Fi's been going in and out, so if this has already been stated, I do apologize, but I guess just looking at this is that this is a climate resiliency goal, and shouldn't we have a goal to have the most energy efficient homes that we could have to help protect the environment and the planet? Just my thoughts.
Would you make suggested changes then? Like, are you okay with the language around the design guidelines to meet the different interests in the room here?
Yeah, I was trying to read what they are. So you were saying that the retrofit the existing buildings for energy efficiency and weatherize. So what would the new goal be with the new language in it?
So the new change is to Goal 5, and it would say provide assistance for maintenance and rehabilitation of housing for Clark County residents and provide design guidelines for new housing with mechanical and passive cooling and heating capacity.
So the goal is to provide the guidelines, but shouldn't the goal be to improve the energy efficiency in the homes? Because that's what we want to do, right? We want to use less electricity in our homes so that we produce less carbon as part of means of resiliency.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you, Andrea Smith again. I think we need to also remember that local governments are kind of bound by the energy code as kind of the minimum and the maximum in our state. So anything that goes above and beyond that is going to be a violation of state law. So just putting that out there.
Anything about encouraging that instead? Encourage designing housing. All right, well, we're not quite there yet, but we also don't want to wordsmith. Yeah. What should we propose to do with this? Yeah, go ahead. Okay, we're hearing, yeah, we're hearing maybe encourage designing new housing. Encourage new housing designed with mechanical or passive cooling and heating capacity. So basically encouraging this kind of design. Okay. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Nick.
And I don't have a problem with adding the same thing that we're trying to make it more efficient. I mean, that's the goal all the time we're doing. So we're not saying that we're going to try to make less efficient houses. So we're always trying to make more efficiency there. So I don't have any problem with adding that.
Okay. So are folks good with the encourage these design of these kinds of houses language? And I know, Brent, you don't care, so you're not going to put every time card one of the other.
I just have a quick clarification on that. You're saying to keep the provide assistance, blah, 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 and then add that?
Yeah.
Not, okay.
Okay. Okay, I'm just going to, is this, yes, Monica?
Going off of what Nick said, and it's maybe even adding at the end, like, so we can make energy efficient houses, not trying to make, the same old that we've had. I don't know if that could be something we want to add.
Encourage the design of. Okay. Are others okay with that? Yes. Are people okay with adding, encouraging the design of new housing with this? Okay. All right. This is how it works, guys. Okay.
For the good of the group,
Okay. All right, I think we're going to move that one forward. Let's move to another set. So we've got a few more here, the G14s and G23 and 26. Maybe I'll just see if, are there any concerns with moving these forward into analysis? Yeah, not with them yet, just moving them forward into analysis for a climate resilience strategy. The rest of them, the G14 and G23 and 26. So there's still concerns over those, okay. Okay, let's just go one by one then, that's fine. Let's go to G14. What would be the concerns with moving that one forward? All right, I'll go to Ann first.
So the identify, protect, and conserve environment, the first of the 14s, G14, isn't that pretty much covered in the comprehensive plan update through the GME?
Yeah, I can confirm that we do have to conserve critical areas under the growth management anyway. So whether or not it's written into a goal or policy, that is still a requirement, whether or not it's on this list.
Okay. Well, so my point being, can it go into the category of group 1 then, therefore?
One thought on that, Anne, is so you're talking about the goal, I think, right? So if we took away the goal, it could take the policy with it. So if you like the policy, I would suggest that we keep the goal there just so the policy has a home. But maybe that policy is also well covered.
I see what you're saying. Mm-hmm. So the policy being ensure no net loss, et cetera.
Yes, that's right.
Isn't that still covered?
So yeah, and you're right in that priority habitats and critical areas, I mean, there's a lot of regulation on that already under state law. So yeah, whether or not that's called out here, I think, just doing this off the top of my head, things that are different in this policy than what are already requirements and policies elsewhere. So striving for net ecological gain, I don't believe that shows up anywhere else. I can confirm, I don't think, right, you can't mandate net ecological gain. That can only be something you can encourage. And then I think I'd have to double check, encouraging habitat connectivity in protected area. There may be some language like that in another chapter in the comp plan,
right,
but I would have to double check that. Yeah, I again can double check that. There's some no net loss language in the critical areas requirements, but off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you exactly where it applies and where it doesn't. So we could double check on that. So so I guess what I'm saying is there's a bit of a mix in that policy. On some things are already requirements, and then other things would be additional.
Okay.
I don't know what to do with that. I feel like Brent.
Great.
Yeah, right.
Let's, Brent, you, go ahead.
Goal 4. Oh, thank you. This is Brent. I'm used to speaking so loud. I don't need this normally. So. My area of knowledge, such as it is forestry, and this mentions specifically forest. And as I was talking earlier with Nick, deforestation is a huge component of climate change challenge. Huge, huge. And that includes the temperate forest not only the tropical forest, and that includes the forest in North Clark County. And I drive in on back roads. I don't like highways, so I drive on rural roads, and I can tell you that trees are disappearing right and left for development, for housing and so forth, and they will never return as long as we are here developing the county. And as a part of this, here's my pet peeve is clear cutting, which I think is associated with this. If they develop 2.5 or 5 acres for a house, they tend to clear cut the forest, and they might replant some shrubs and decorative trees. Studies have indicated that this drastically reduces the carbon uptake of the forest, and that's not an opinion. That's been demonstrated by research. So I'm saying that somehow protecting and conserving the forest in particular, it's not being done. And I don't know what the solution would be, because as Nick says, this is America, and if you want to cut your forest, then you can, evidently. And we can go.
All right.
That's not on you, Nick. So, but it's been demonstrated that long-term, it's much better for climate change and much better even in economic value to select cut rather than clear cut. As far as I know, when the state does any logging on state forest, it clear cuts. And as Nick mentioned, because that's the way it's always been done, and we're very slow to change anything, but I think that there should be some language in one of these goals and policies that should address preserving the forest and clear cutting. And that's the tip of the iceberg, to mix metaphors.
All right. Thank you. So Brent, are you suggesting changes to these, or are you voicing support for moving these forward for analysis?
Well, of course, moving forward for analysis, what does that mean exactly? Are they going to change the language after they analyze it?
They is us, so we'll see.
So I
guess I would suggest if the language as is seems like it could encompass what's important to you about, conserving forests and reducing clear cuts, then it probably is good enough to go for analysis. I'm just checking if you have concerns with the words that are there.
I think it's good enough to go for analysis.
Okay, that's helpful. Other concerns? Yeah, Noelle?
So I guess this comment's a little bit more general. It's actually a question. So specifically, what will they be analyzing about this policy? Because what maybe I would like to know about it would be something different than other people would. And in particular, thinking in terms of, we have critical areas right now. We're continually discovering new things, adding new policies. Critical areas are growing, which leads to less and less room for us to have land for jobs, land for housing. So those are the types of things I would like to understand about this particular goal or policy, and how that balances out. But I'm not sure how that analysis, what will the analysis be? Will there be a, cost for these things?
So, thank you, Nicole. Yeah, we will be selecting a little bit later this year some criteria with you all. You'll get to weigh in on what criteria we include in our what's called the multi-criteria prioritization process. So this kind of scoring and prioritization process. So our goal is to pick some goals and policies for resilience today to move forward. We're going to pivot to greenhouse gas, and then Tracy and I will both come back to you all to talk about criteria in a couple months.
So then we get to help determine this inquiry of the analysis. Okay.
Yes, correct. And back to Anne.
I'm going to save my comments for G26, so I'll just, how do I say that in here? Yeah.
Yield the floor, great.
Move it
Thank you, Nick.
towards Andrea.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm a nerd. Okay, Andrea, I don't know, I'm not sure exactly where it fits in here, but I don't disagree with conserving, protecting, et cetera. But I would like to also see some language or some analysis of like, as we preserve those areas or potentially expand them, is there a conversation to be had about potentially redrawing UGA lines to ensure that there's enough buildable lands for things that Noel had already talked about? So I would like to see possible and looks like.
And so that's for the analysis itself later on. Okay, that's helpful. And Ann?
I totally agree with what Brent said and your level of knowledge. Thank you very much. And I also noticed that, where is it? Group 4, D13, there is increased tree canopy cover and green spaces as a goal. Can we do some combining and maybe come up with some wording that is specific to forestry, tree canopy, as opposed to making it more generalized and therefore subject to disagreement or criticism? Because what Brent said is absolutely, I mean, nobody can argue with that. You know, the importance of preserving the tree canopy as frequently as possible in as many areas as possible is critical to why we're all here tonight. So, but it just seems to me that there's some possibility for rewording and combining with one of the other two suggestions on the sheet.
Reaction to that, I'm wondering, I would suggest that we keep the tree canopy goals separate from the identify, protect, and conserve critical habitats goal and policy, but I wonder, would it work to add in the goal that says increase tree canopy cover and green spaces, if we add in language there about also preventing deforestation or clear cutting? So that goal is fully about trees. Because the other goal that we're talking about, goal 14, is about more than trees. It's about all different types of critical habitats. So I wonder if it would work better to put specific comments about trees and forestry into that tree goal. Would that work?
I know. I don't care. Yeah. I made my point. Brent made his point.
Okay. Then Brent, yes, go ahead, and then Monica.
Okay, this is Brent. Preserving a forest and increasing tree canopy are two totally different things. You're preserving something that's already there, and then increasing canopy is you're adding something that's not there or replacing something. Those are different things.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Point.
Right. Monica?
Monica Zazueta. I wanted to suggest an added word. So it's identify, protect, preserve, and rewild and environmentally critical areas. So that was just a suggestion that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Okay, so you're suggesting preserve and rewild be added to goal 14? Mm-hmm.
Make sure we're just doing all of it, encompassing all of the things we need to do.
Maybe I'll see how others have thoughts on adding the preserve and rewild language. Yeah, Nick?
I don't know about that. I mean, we already do that with, I guess I'd need a better definition of rewild. That it's just a little bit too vague. I mean, what's wild to you compared to somebody else that what it looks out there? We want to use native plants when we reforest. Do we want to remove invasive species to make it like that? So I'm totally fine with that. So if that's what we're meaning, I'm totally good with that. Rewild is? Okay, then I'm good with your rewild.
Thank you, Janet.
All right. So maybe I'll just check with the group generally if we could move G14 and policy 1 under it into analysis with the one change of G14 would turn to identify, protect, preserve, and rewild environmentally critically areas, et cetera. So raise your 10 card if that's okay. All right. Nick? And also, okay, looks like Gabriella's okay with that change too. And I'll check from Jessica and Elena as well. All right, great. Moving forward with the rewilding. Thank you, everyone. All right, so then we have a few more on our high priority list. Was there something in this? I keep missing it. I'm sorry, Jessica, if you had your hand up from before. I don't know why I never see it. Did you have another comment?
No, someone else already pointed it out that forest and tree canopies were ecologically different. That's fine. I'm good.
Okay, thank you so much. Apologies. All right, let's move then to G23 on promoting waste reduction, composting, and recycling. Elsie, does anyone have any concerns with moving that forward? Yeah, go ahead, Monica.
Monica, I know we're having this word about implement, but I like the word implement on this one. Implement waste reduction. That's why we're going towards our goals of trying to create an economy or a community that actually is being mindful of the waste and composting and everything. That was just my suggestion. But I want to make sure I hear everyone here and think what they hear what they think.
So implement instead of promote is kind of a stronger word choice there. I'll see if folks are okay with that change. Okay. Just one. I'm hearing just one from the goal expert over here. Noelle, and then I'll go to Gabriella.
So I'm a little confused on how G23 differs from, oh, this one also, it says G23 up here. The policy 1, G23, that we moved to greenhouse gas.
Oh, that's a good point.
So it
One's
should,
a policy, one's a goal.
but shouldn't they then both be moved to the greenhouse gas?
Am I on? Okay. Goal 23 had 3 policies under it originally, and we moved 2 of them to greenhouse gas. So this goal still has 1 remaining resilience policy with it. So the goal itself isn't moved. There's still a policy that goes with it, which is develop capacity or programs for removing and composting of solid waste and large vegetative debris in the aftermath of a storm or other severe weather event. So that's why the goal remains.
I would like to see it moved, just because to me that makes sense, but I could be way off.
Yeah. I will say that we made an addition to the goal in the last round. The goal was originally promote waste reduction, composting, and recycling, and the language about emphasis on producer responsibility is new, and that does align more with the 2 policies that we agreed to move. So I might suggest that we just change the goal back to promote waste reduction, composting, and recycling to align better with the one remaining policy, which is really about debris cleanup after a storm or major event.
I like that, and now it makes sense. Sorry.
Like incentivize waste reduction, composting, and recycling, period? Okay. All right, so I'll check with the group if they would support moving that forward for analysis, implement waste reduction, composting, and recycling, period. Great. I am seeing tent cards saying yes here. Gabriella, I see your hand as a yes. Same with Jessica and Elena. Okay, great, thank you. All right. Let's move to G26, and that's split across 2 pages. The goal is on page 2, and then there's a policy under it on page 3. So you might have to bend your pages to see them together if you'd like. And I know, Nick, you had a comment on this one, right, from before?
Let me see how I phrase this. With keeping with not the clear-cut thing for people developing, I would like to see something like cluster lot subdivisions or something out in the country that people want to move out there. And let's say you got an 80-acre piece and you could tentatively get 5 or 4 house sites out of that, then you give everybody 2 acres and then put in a trust that they can put the rest of the acreages into a timber-producing trust for them to do selective harvest for that. That way, if people want to live in the rural area, we can conserve our natural resources, also provide housing to people that want to live out there, and at the same time, they can be involved in that harvest and deharvest of learning how to do it. And that's not available with 20 or 80 acre pieces, and we're going to be moving out there someday, so that would be one of my suggestions.
And Nick, do you want to say a little bit more about how that would be incorporated into the language here?
Well, the comprehensive plan is coming, and it would have to do a zoning change would have to incorporate that.
Okay.
Some type of special district or something would happen out with in order for that to happen.
Okay. All right, I'll check in with Justin.
Justin Wood here, just making a comment on G26 Policy 1 here. Really wanted some more clarity on some of the terms used within the policy. I'm a little reticent to give my okay for further analysis. Just a couple of the terms that I think would be great to have definitions of and also examples of for our next meeting would be public development covenants, climate smart building practices, anti-displacement policies, and what is net ecological gain or loss. It makes it really hard to provide informed input as a CAG member when we're not really given that knowledge. So maybe another round of this, we could have a key along with this document just to kind of understand what these terms are. There's a significant need for low-income and middle-income housing in Clark County and throughout Washington State, and I recognize that. But again, a little reticent to further analyze this without those definitions. And then my last comment here, we have the language, in particular, off-site manufactured homes and accessory dwelling units. I foresee maybe a little conflict with providing those housing types within the existing urban growth area. Generally, manufactured housing you cannot stack. I'm not aware of product types that you can. So generally, that's medium density zoned land. So it's not that denser development that we see kind of later on in the policy here. So a little conflict there. And then one last point, we had a previous policy, I believe, that was fostering urban open space, which again, to Noel's point, is the multitude of competing needs within the urban growth area, and how are we going to all fit that in, and a large amount of concern for that. I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Justin. And Monica?
Thank you, Monica Zazweta. The notes that I have is in G26 that encourage and support diverse, affordable housing options. For me, I would like to possibly see it change the wording to encourage and support diverse of actual affordable housing options, because we need to call out the affordability in Clark County. I know that my rent is insane, and I know it needs to be called out more, because I know it's more than 30% of the income that we have at home. And then ensure that policies, codes, and regulations on the next page, P1, ensure that policy, codes, and regulations. That one, it says, I add that rent and housing, it should be 30% of anyone's income. And so I would like to see that brought back into our communities, so that we're not, a lot of people are struggling to pay rent, childcare, car payments, insurance, all the things, so that we can actually have a community that thrives instead of just survives. Thank you.
And Sharon?
My comment on this is that when I read it, I questioned whether or not it was appropriate to include it in the climate part of this comp plan, and maybe it's better suited to a housing, to put into the housing element if you have that in the comprehensive code. It just struck me as odd having it here in the in what we're dealing with here.
Okay. Go ahead, Dana.
Okay. I think that I will also say that Department of Commerce has sort of flagged housing as a resilience issue of interest, but some justification for including it is that when people have access to safe, affordable, stable housing, they're generally more resilient to any kind of climate hazard, especially if the housing happens to be climate smart in its design. But just the ability to go indoors to a safe, climate-controlled space has that benefit.
And I agree with what you're saying, but that's not what this is. And so maybe we change the wording to fit more with how you've just described it.
Yeah. I've heard a number of different comments and concerns and additions with this one. Justin, I heard you saying that you would like to see more definitions to understand it, and from Monica, wanting to make sure that it's really stressing the affordable piece here, and then kind of making it more clear that this is about climate resilience and not just housing generally. I do want to see, though, Justin, I'm hearing that without the definitions, you can't maybe make a decision today.
Justin would hear, no, I wouldn't. I just wouldn't be comfortable without those definitions, and specifically examples, real world examples, and how it would affect the housing market.
And would the analysis help with some of that? I think then the analysis is where you would learn that the impacts.
Totally understand that. This is just the second time we've looked at this document with those terms, and it still hasn't. I still don't know. I'm still a little reticent without those in hand right now to say, hey, I would like to have further analysis.
Okay, that's fair. Then maybe we can get those terms to you, but I'll check with the rest of the group to see if you would be comfortable with moving this forward into analysis with maybe stressing the affordability a bit more, and that this is about housing in support of climate resilience, not housing generally. Okay. 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 So we'll work on rewording and the definitions and then get back to the group. Great. All right, we have gone through all of the high priority for CAG discussion pieces. Woohoo! I was going to say, does anyone need a break? But we only have like a little over 30 minutes left, so no break for you. But if you need to stand up to stretch or anything, then completely understandable. We do want to leave a little bit of time for public comment and next steps too, but we'll try to keep going through as many of these as we can. Okay, let's go to group 4. And these are all sort of medium priority. Some of you had some current concerns about them, but you know, again, not sure if they're concerns that are enough to warrant not analyzing them. So I will ask if there's any here on this list that you would like to call out for discussion, and really honing in the discussion on this is a change that's needed in order for me to be comfortable in analyzing this, rather than kind of the merits of the goal or strategy itself, goal or policy itself. Dawn, go ahead.
I think this is G3, promote local food economies and local.
Wait, group 4, sorry. We'll go to that one in just a second, but I'll note that for discussion when we get there. So up to group 4, which has G12, 13, 24, 27, and a whole bunch from 28, basically goal 28 plus its policies. Yes, Don.
Did you say group 4?
Not group 4. So we're on page 3. Oh, I heard the word goal 4. I'm sorry. Yes, it's group 4. Thank you.
It says protect for group 4, goal 12 at the top line. Is that where we are?
Yes, thank you.
Protect, conserve, and recover salmonids and other fish species. I would like to, why not say all aquatic species?
Okay, all aquatic species. Does anyone have concerns with that? Maybe I won't ask everyone to raise their 10 card each time now, but just if you have concerns with that.
Yeah, I got concerns.
Okay.
What about invasive species?
Except all native aquatic species.
Ah, very nice. All native aquatic species. Okay, I'm not seeing any concerns with that.
I'm good with all of these.
You're good with all of them? Okay. Anyone else have concerns with any of the others?
What about
Go ahead, John.
G24, manage water resource sustainability to meet the needs of, what about farms?
I'm hearing farms are included in businesses.
Okay. Thank you.
And Brent?
Okay, Brent Marsden. Now, this may be a voice crying in the wilderness, and I'm using wilderness as a little bit of a pun maybe. But G28, encourage sustainable development. And so we're talking about unincorporated areas. I would like to discourage development. But so the question, serious question is, what is sustainable development?
And how do we balance it?
And does anyone want to say what sustainable development is here, or what the intent is with this goal?
I would say sustainable development, like some of these other terms, which we can certainly provide some examples of, like climate smart building practices. We can give examples of those, but the kind of intention here is to leave it a little bit open-ended and flexible and not to prescribe the definition outright here. But maybe, Jenna, do you have any thoughts on that, like the balancing question with existing comp plan policies, like if there are things that might be in conflict, how to find balance?
Yeah, no, I agree that sustainable development means, right, could mean different things to different people, right, and that it's pretty general. So I think, I'm trying to, right, I'm not sure what to, I guess I sort of asked the group, like, are you okay with sort of a squishy term, right, that isn't defined necessarily, at least as far as I know, in our comp plan, right, that leaves open for interpretation and what happens with it? Or do you actually want to use different words that are, you know, more clear to this group? So anyway, I think I'd sort of, we have some of these general terms that aren't clearly defined in here, so I guess it's looking to you all, what would you recommend?
Well, did I ever have it? Oh, okay, good. Just checking. No, this is sort of an issue for me when we start talking about encouraging development of any kind, and just make sure that it's not in hazard-prone areas. Well, that's not doable. Frankly, I mean, right. So I suppose it could be a goal if it were better said, and this gets back to the definition of sustainable. And I agree with using the word existing when referencing UGAs. But hazard prone would have to be defined. Oh.
Also pointed out to me that all of the policies under the goal may provide some more clarity on what the goal is trying to say. So it might be helpful to look at all of those. And they all happen to be listed here together. That is one of the goals that has 4 policies, which is more than some of the others.
Yeah. And I had one more thing. And I didn't address your comment around the balance. And I guess the one thing I would highlight with this climate bill is it is very clear that we can't, we have to plan for the population growth. Mm-hmm. So whether or not you want it or not in Clark County isn't, like, that's not really an option. Like they're saying plan for climate and the population is projected to grow here. So I don't know if that helps answer, but it presents the challenge, right?
We're stuck with that.
Yeah.
No, I understand that. But it still gets back to the need to manage based on balance.
Yeah.
Enough said, I guess.
Yeah.
Monica Zazueta, I was looking at the encourage sustainable development sentence, and I was thinking about maybe saying holistic, encourage holistic development. I don't know, but it's holistic building development refers to an approach in the construction industry that takes into consideration the overall well-being and sustainability of a building and its encompass. It goes beyond just the physical structure and incorporates various aspects such as environmental impact, energy efficiency, social impact, and occupant comfort. There's energy efficiency, sustainable materials, indoor environmental quality, water conservation, green infrastructure, and social impact. So that maybe. Thank you.
Oh, okay, I see. That's the definition of it. Got it. Okay. Okay. And Don?
Goal 28, this is Don Steinke, it's really 2 things. It says what type of development, sustainable, and where. I would like to strike out the word, the 2 letters un. So I would like to encourage sustainable development within the existing existing incorporated urban growth area, existing incorporated urban growth area, like the existing city boundaries, instead of encouraging people to move outside of Vancouver into by the fairgrounds, which is in the urban growth boundary, encouraging them to live inside the city limits of all the cities.
This is Jenna. The county doesn't have any authority within the cities. So if this is a county policy that's encouraging growth in the urban area, it would have to be in the unincorporated urban growth area. So
got it.
So anyway, yeah.
And I think it was Nick and Noel.
Okay, thank you. We need to figure out how we need to do this, right? There's going to be a give and a take on both sides to say, how do we best enforce the climate action for people that want to live out in the country? And so I just think, on your point of everybody wanting to live in the town, not all of us want to. There's some people that want to have that 5-acre farm, raise that cow or that goat, and teach their kids farming and all that other stuff. That Future Farmers America program is one of the most awesome things in the world you can see. Go to the fair and watch them. No kids are watching their cell phones when they're raising animals. So we need to figure out something that we can get to that point. So I like the way it states right now. We are in the county. We need to figure out on the unincorporated. And again, we don't want to go and clear cut everything. That's not what I want to see out there. We want to drive and see. I agree with you wholeheartedly. A clear cut is ugly, right? Existing tree stand is beautiful. That's what we're here for. So what am I trying to say here is, I don't mind what you're saying right now. And we have the Growth Management Act we have to contend with, and all the comprehensive plan and the building codes and the zoning laws and everything too. So we're not going to change anything here. At the same time, we need to talk about how we have to grow. Our population growth is going to grow. We have to grow, and how do we do that best?
Okay. Thank you. Noel?
I just have one quick comment. So within the existing unincorporated urban growth area, explain why we're including existing unincorporated. Aren't we just talking about the urban growth area in general?
I think the intention of the word existing was to encourage, promote building in the areas that are already urbanized first, as opposed to if we remove the word existing, right, it is more supportive of boundary expansion, essentially, right? So I think that is what that word is doing in there, which may change how you feel about those words. But right, if the group wanted to, you could get rid of that, and it would just be focused on wherever the unincorporated urban growth area is. That's where the focus would be.
At that moment in time. So not saying existing as the establishment of this policy, the existing urban growth area is what we have to deal with, correct?
Right, but it's not time bound. Yeah.
Yeah, Andrea Smith. One comment, I think if G28, priority number 1, if it gets down the line, I think there might be some heartburn with some folks about the terminology of the use of defensible space. So I think that's already included in Firewise communities and that guidance. So maybe just keeping that and then getting rid of the other one, because very contentious piece. Defensible space is basically saying that you should have anywhere between 30 and 120 feet around your house that's clear of vegetation, trees, shrubbery, et cetera, that could potentially, light your house on fire if it gets if in an event of a fire. So, I just know that like with that piece, there's going to be a lot of pushback. Wanted to kind of bring that up. And then I also had a question too, regarding what the definition of like the new planning projects is. Like, is there like a minimum of like just commercial project, all projects? I kind of want a little bit more detail on that before I'm ready to like support that.
Okay. And so remove the use of defensible space completely there?
Yeah, because I do believe that's a component of the Firewise communities. I just want to recommend calling it out because people see that and then they think that automatically means just clearing trees and shrubbery around your house. So just knowing that that's going to probably be a point of contention.
Okay, that's helpful.
On to the second one. I think the second policy came from a recommendation either from a CAG or an EJC member, so I'm not sure that the new planning projects has been defined, like what that means. So open to changes in wording or being more clear about that. I think it came from a direct suggestion from someone.
Yeah, I think for me to be comfortable on that, I just wouldn't necessarily want it to be on, like when you think of every single housing permit that is like, that will like, you know, push development timelines and building and everything, make it more expensive. So, and there are anti-growth people out there that's going to be utilized and weaponized. So just keeping that in the back of our minds.
Are those up from before? Okay. So I'm just gonna, the specific changes that I think I heard, and I heard some other concerns about some of the implications of these goals and policies for sure, or just wanting to understand more, which is of course why we analyze. But I heard, and hopefully you can see them, kind of. Okay, so for G12, adding the, native aquatic species generally, and then to G28, encouraging holistic development, and then removing the use of defensible space from Goal 28, Policy 1. Those are the three changes I heard. So I'll see if folks are comfortable with this group of goals and policies moving forward with those changes. And just, yeah, do your name tent thing. And I'll check online too to see if Elena, Gabriella, and Jessica are comfortable with that. All right. Did you put, okay. Noelle, were you? I saw everyone's tent card go up, but Noelle, you still have a concern. Go ahead.
I just, the existing unincorporated is bothering me. So I don't know.
Is there a change you would suggest?
Yeah, taking existing and unincorporated out.
Okay. I think I heard it has to say unincorporated because this comp plan is only for the unincorporated area.
Right. I mean, we could take out existing. I don't think that changes anything. But I think if it's a county policy, it needs to either say or at least mean unincorporated. Even so, yeah.
But I would like existing. Like, it could be interpreted either way.
Sure. So
and I think it could be problematic if we do need to expand our urban growth area at some point. So,
are there concerns with removing the word existing? Justin?
I would agree with Noelle. I did initially vote, but I think I'm fine with it, but truing up that language so it's existing at the time, however we want to say that. I think just the addition of that, I would be comfortable with it.
So somehow showing that it's like existing at the time or removing it entirely. Yeah. Okay. And online, Gabrielle, I saw your hand go up and it's still up. Did you have a comment? Okay.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
That was
looks
from
like,
the vote. Sorry.
I think Jessica has a question.
Was that
about
Jessica?
Defensible space.
Yeah,
Go
so
ahead, Jessica.
just recently, oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, okay. So just recently, we had received some information from our homeowners insurance about defensible space. And there were several suggestions on establishing defensible space around our home, which can help reduce the cost of the homeowners insurance. And the area was a 5-foot clearing, you know, of trees and shrubs around the home. And we also have a family in California, and they're being required to maintain their homeowners insurance. So I think that as part of being climate resilient, we have to address defensible space as something we may have a goal to achieve for new buildings or existing buildings.
Okay. And Jessica, would keeping just the word supporting Firewise communities, I'm hearing that tends to encompass the use of defensible space within it, but it's just not called out specifically. Would you be comfortable with that?
Yes, I guess, and part of that is when we establish the criteria, maybe we can work on some specifics of defensible space.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, Sharon? Support Firewise practices. Are folks okay with that? Mm-hmm. Are any concerns with that? Okay. All right, I think we're generally good with this set, this group. All right. I think we need to spend a little bit of time on public comment. Did you have another comment, Sharon? Okay. I see there's a few members of the public. I will stop my share, and if you don't mind putting up the slide about public comment. We'll just take a break for public comment. If we have time after that, maybe we can run through a few more of the goals and policies. But if you are a member of the public and would like to make a comment, go ahead and raise your hand at this time. And I see Jude here. So just a reminder that we're doing about 2 minutes for public comment, and some of the guidelines are here up on the screen. So Jude, go ahead. And we can't hear you yet.
There's the button. Thank you. Jude Waite. And
now we can hear you. Yes.
So I am co-representing the Food and Farm Justice Network on the Environmental Justice Coalition. And it was great to be here and hear all of you and all of your wisdom and go through these goals and policies with you. I have one comment that goes back to the beginning of the meeting around, if I can find my note here, the resilience, sort of the nuts and bolts. So there was something in there about food under food insecure folks, like people living on the street, but I didn't see anything around food access and food security in a general way as a very big risk to any of the climate impacts. And in an emergency situation, I think that needs to be called out as a separate line item. I would also like to say that I am an environmental scientist and a land use watershed analyst to some extent. And so I would like to call out the connectivity and the biodiversity, not just with forests, but in terms of open space and development in general, I don't really see that analyzed anywhere in terms of expansion and policies around what happens on the parcels that are basically clear cut to what I've seen is they're clear cut and scraped to whatever you might term this bedrock here. So there's no infiltration, no matter what you plant as lawns or anything. But the migratory species and the pollinators need dispersal. They need connectivity. So in some way, with all of your GIS magic, if you could analyze dispersal and remnants and whatever you can build into the system in terms of whether it's in, and this is sort of a separate comment, whether it's in the urban growth area or in the unincorporated area in general, that these principles sort of apply across the landscape, whether we like it or not. I'm a little surprised.
Thank you, Jude.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And I know the EJC will get a chance to look at some of this later, so appreciate your participation there. We've got about 12 minutes left, and I'm going to check with the group. Do we want to try to go through a couple more of these? Maybe quickly look at the group 5. These hopefully have fewer comments because like only 1 or 2 of you said that you needed to talk about them. So I'll check to see if there's any from group 5, which goes from page 3 to page 4, that you think you'd have concerns about moving forward for analysis.
Sylvia?
Yes.
I think these 2 goals just address some of the public comment concerns.
Perfect. Noelle?
So, policy 2, under G3, I had a couple questions. Do we know if current ag lands are being used under appropriate designations and being optimized for that designation? So this goes to like adding or making more land accessible, and just wondering if what's already being used is being optimized in all ways, like, you know, sustainable farming practices, the right types of crops. And then, well, yeah, because why would we continue to provide more land to do agricultural practices if we're not already optimizing what we have? And then thinking in terms, I know the comp plan, I believe the comp plan says something about economically viable agricultural lands, and thinking in terms of what does that term mean, and maybe defining that somehow.
I'm going to call Jose up to help field some of those. I was going to say, I am not sure how much the county knows in terms of how people are using their land unless they're enrolled in like one of the tax programs. So I think we probably, I'm going to check with Jose if he knows of something that that we don't know that. And then Jose can also talk about what the Growth Management Act, you know, in terms of the ag land we are required to like protect and preserve under Growth Management Act, or anything else you can chime in on.
Okay. So 2 things. The designated ag land is a prescriptive thing from the state that we're required to protect, and we were required to identify and protect that back in 1990 when we were looking at adopting the comprehensive plan. So that's existing. That's been through that analysis and met the criteria for one of the criteria was the that it be viable, but that was one of many, economically. And then the second issue, well, all land in the unincorporated county allows for agricultural use, outright. So all land could be used for agriculture, but there's a specific agriculturally designated land that's specific that requires us to protect it. In terms of how it's being used, the best information that we have is that we know which of the lands that are in that agricultural protection that are in the current use program, so they have the tax deferral, and there's a significant amount of property that's outside of that that's not zoned ag, but it is in the program as well. So there's what we've designated isn't probably, not all of it is being used for agriculture, and then there's areas outside of it that are being used for agriculture.
So specifically the words facilitate increased land access for local farmers. So I guess my concern is what does facilitate increased land access mean, and how does it relate to the way, like, why are we giving more land access if we don't understand if the current land is being optimized?
So think about the areas that are already designated ag that aren't being used. So this would be a way to try to help encourage that land to be used. Why isn't it being used? Are there people that are older that can't farm anymore and they're just not using the property for that? Is there a way that we can encourage someone who wants to farm it to use it without expanding how much land? You're just using what's existing.
Understood. I guess then what I would say about this particular issue is that it sounds like we have a lot of lack of knowledge when it comes to what's going on with our ag lands. So maybe more of an ag land study would be what I would like to see in this specific policy. So we understand how it's being used, how it's being optimized, what is really the need and the interest in more, things like that.
Is that facilitating increased land access for farmers might not be the right approach, but instead it's about just facilitating better or improved use of the land for something along those lines. And I'm seeing some head nods. Like the word increase might not really be appropriate for what we're trying to get at. Is that some kind of change like that? Okay, and Sunrise is actually, yes. Okay, so I'm hearing some yeses with Sunrise. Go ahead.
Sunrise's mic is off.
Oh, it's still not working? Can you hear me now? I sound like an ad.
Yes, we can hear you now. Thanks.
I don't know. Okay. I'm sorry, this is Sunrise. So I think that, yes, I think it's a valid question to ask, what is the current farmland potentially being used for? But there are so many people that are wanting to be able to farm and that cannot. The prices of everything right now are through the roof and astronomical. And so the incentive is coming into where you have that person that you mentioned that is our hypothetical who's older, they're now not able to farm. So what is the option? They can develop that, they can sell it for that and make a lot more money, or they can try to figure out, are there ways that we can somehow make it actually affordable for people to take on that property? Because once we develop that property, this is climate change we're talking about, and that is farmland that once it's developed, we're not going to come back and undevelop it and then put into that farmland. So to me, this is such a critical piece. I really struggle with the, sorry, that was the other one I was going to talk about, but I won't do my speech on that one. But anyways, I just think that we really need to not be We need to make it more accessible for people, and that is a huge component in this. And surveying how much we have isn't going to tell us how many people are out there that want to be able to farm that cannot farm. There are organizations that Monica's part of that, with LULAC, where they're looking at creating farming options for, Spanish-speaking community that can't come in. They don't have that ability to get the land. How can we make this more accessible? And that, to me, is so critical when it comes to the EJ, when it comes to climate, when it comes to our green spaces. It really hits all of these. So I guess that's it.
So are there changes here that might, I actually kind of hear you both saying similar things about the land needs to be more accessible to be used in a way that makes it better for farmers, right? But it's not necessarily, but that the word increased land access doesn't quite capture that concept.
This is Sunrise, I have no issues with the way that it's worded. I think it's worded well. I think that I do think it should be facilitating increased land access for local farmers and providing affordable. Monica and I have the same thing where we keep adding actual, but actual affordable agriculture and land. To prevent displacement and all that, I think that is key. Okay. So I don't have a problem with the way it's worded.
Okay. Point out also for Noel, this might be helpful. We have goal 1 here, which is a little bit more geared toward what you're talking about, I think, with kind of like best practical use of land. So goal 1 is about supporting conservation research technical assistance for farmers to implement best management practices that address the impacts of climate change. That's, I don't believe it's on, well, it is somewhere on here. It's in group 7, thank you. Group 7, goal 1, policy 1. So that's kind of hitting that point about trying to ensure that land is used under best management practices, if helpful.
We're getting to time. It's about 8:30. I'm going to make a suggestion that Sunrise and Noel get together and find words that work for this goal. Yeah, well, I think these are, representing the different, I think it's easy to have 2 people. If we have like 8 people wordsmithing, it's not going to work. That's my suggested next step for that one. I do want to do a check-in with the team because we didn't get to all of these, but we do hope that there are fewer comments on the remaining ones. How do people think we should move forward? The team needs a list to analyze moving forward. Any ideas from this group on how to get to alignment on the remaining goals and policies? Yeah, Monica?
Actually, I just wanted to say my 2 things for that. I wanted to add the actual affordable in that line, and then when it says, and with limited use of pesticides, I don't want any pesticides. Taking that out with no use of pesticides or chemicals, that was my 2 in there. Yeah.
Yes, we didn't get there, unfortunately. Dawn, do you have an idea?
Most of my comments that I prepared ahead of time were for the rest of these items that didn't rise to the high priority of everybody else. But I would like time to discuss those, and I don't think tonight maybe is a good time. I mean, 8:30.
Okay. Yeah, it is 8:30. Go ahead.
Where are we?
Where are we?
Yeah, how many do we have now with these? I mean, the goal
A
was
lot.
30.
We have a lot.
No. My question is, how many goals do we have now?
Oh.
I mean, are we at 35 without the group 7? Are we, where are we with the whole thing?
I see. What's the number?
Since we've agreed to move those cross-references and the greenhouse gas ones, we're at 35. We have capacity to do further analysis on all of these. So if, maybe that's helpful.
We're at 35 with the groups, all set groups.
Yes. We removed 10. Yeah, there were 3 for greenhouse gas and 7 for cross-reference. Mm-hmm.
The remaining ones we didn't.
Yeah, and
One option.
I was just going to add, because the pace of this project is crazy, which I want to acknowledge, like we are just having to move really quick because of our timing on everything around this to meet our due date. We do have to really shift gears next month to start talking about greenhouse gas, because otherwise we're going to totally run out of time with that. So I think if there is additional discussion and feedback on these, it will probably be a couple months till we get back to it. You know, like we can do some analysis, bring it back, and then have more discussion. So I just wanted to make sure we're clear that, you know we aren't getting to all of them in depth today. There will be more time to talk, but it probably won't be for a couple more months. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
So should we just save these papers and put all our notes on it, and then when we have the discussion again, bring it back? That seem okay? No? No, no, it's done.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm hearing we won't have time to discuss what to analyze anymore, right?
I think my point being, the reason we went in the order we did was we wanted to talk about where there was more issues first. So we understand there's still probably suggested changes to the rest of these, but it seemed like there was less of a groundswell of concern. So our thought was, if you all are at least okay with us doing some analysis, we will revisit them. We can talk more and adjust them still, or kick them off, or expand them. So our hope is that, right, you all can say, at least study them and talk, but we'll talk more about them. It doesn't mean you're okay with them, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Noah.
Come into the microphone.
Yeah, Noel?
No, I was just, are we voting to move the?
Yeah, so can we just move the remaining for analysis? Yes. As is.
Hooray us.
Okay. Is it okay to still submit?
Our challenge is that I think we're looking for the group to move together, and if you're just submitting edits to staff, then it's us who's deciding what to do with them. So I think our preference would be hang on to your notes for the rest of them. We will get back to it, but we'd rather you all talk to each other and hash it out versus like it going through us and coming back. Right, I think so. Anyway, so yes, we want your feedback, but we aren't going to do anything with it for a few months. So if that answers your question.
Okay. Thank you for staying a few minutes over. You all did incredible work today. That was so much. You should, round of applause. Really good work. I think our next steps are that we have another meeting in July. We will see then. I'm sure there are others. Anything else we had to say?
No.
No. Okay. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Right, it looked like Jessica had that question, but I think I answered.
We can close the chat. Close the webinar.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.